Welcome everyone, Sylph Dominic Hawkins here. Welcome you back to another Hoshinden Fireside Chat podcast. I'm joined today, super special guest, Murray Goodchild. Welcome, Murray.
Thanks, Sylph.
Really
nice
good
to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you on the show, especially after having your wife on the show about a year and a half ago, and we finally looped around.
Yeah, that's great. I like this fireside idea. Do you have a bit of crackle going on in the background?
You know, I should actually. I did think of making a proper intro sound bite, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe I should do
nice.
That's a good idea.
I'm even warmed by the idea that it's a fireside chat.
So everyone, listeners, look out for the next fireside chat. Or maybe I'll add it on to this one. So retrospectively, we can pretend that it was really awesome.
Sure. Yeah, well, that's it. We're not live, I don't think so.
No. Although we can pretend. No, we're not live.
No, we should. We are alive though.
We are, or else this wouldn't be as entertaining. So Murray, you're an acupuncturist. You trained in Chinese medicine for 20 years plus, and also a background in anthroposophy.
That's right.
The works of Rudolf Steiner, and you and I, we've been friends for I don't know, 15, 16 years or something or more.
Yep.
We've had lots and lots of long discussions into the night about lots of varied topics. So today I thought we could hone in on where our two fields meet.
Yeah.
And the fireside chats, the Hoshinden chats, they're aimed at a martial art audience, aimed at my students. And I thought it could be really awesome if we hit the ground running. And I think we'll end up somewhere that's a really nice meeting place.
Well, we can go straight to lethal acupuncture points. How about that?
Bit of dim mark, bam. Well, actually, it's funny you say that, because studying Hoshin back in the day, like my initial understanding, my initial study of Subo, like point work, was to cause disharmony and to cause problems. It was only later on that I discovered there was a whole field of study to support and nurture and heal.
Yeah, it's kind of like a doorway, isn't it? You can knock on it with flowers, or you can kick it down and rob the house or something.
But it's just funny because I think most people. Oh, I've recounted that story to a few people who are studying TCM, and they've been shocked at the idea that anyone would aim to cause disharmony. And I was like, that's a whole other conversation for a whole other time. But tell me just like briefly, you with your background in TCM and Anthroposophy, I know you had a background of study in Aikido, is that right?
Yeah.
A long time ago?
Yeah, that was when I was actually studying acupuncture. So they married very well. It was, some of the most formative. I mean, because it's it's a study in motion, isn't it? So it and a real testing ground, like when they in Aikido, when they test to see whether you're grounded and balanced, they'll test that. So it takes away that thing of, oh, am I or aren't I? It's like you fell over, you're not, or you didn't fall over, you are.
Yeah. So it's not a theoretical study.
Yeah, and I guess acupuncture is not so, when you're learning it, it's not so immediate. You might hope your treatment did well, and the feedback you get, a week later, it mightn't be what you thought. It might be that a client doesn't think they did well, but the signs show that they are making progress. So it's in that sense. Healing's a funny thing, you sort of got to really establish a clear intent of what you're about, and then look for the signs if you're achieving that. And not to be too, I mean, it's lovely, ultimately it's about the client feeling better, but that's not always the defining measure point, particularly during the procedure. It's like in an operation, like if it's open heart surgery and they weren't knocked out, and they halfway through they started laughing, you'd go, oh, the surgery's a success. it wouldn't be.
Oh, the blood's for you.
Yeah. Maybe they're laughing because they're in their final death throes.
Yeah, that's right. It's all just what is it, dopamine and excitement.
That's right.
Yeah. No, you when you were just speaking there, something came up. I thought it's actually right on point, because one of the things I've talked a lot about is I talk about martial arts as a vehicle of liberation, alongside things like yoga. And the idea that martial arts should be good for you is such a weird concept. Like the concept that yoga should be good for you is an odd concept. You know, like martial arts shouldn't be good for you. Maybe if you take a really, really abstract perspective, long term, of good as a trend trajectory, in terms of like, you don't go along to study to feel necessarily in that moment more comfortable with your identification, more at home with your ideologies. Like it really should shake the roots.
And the actual training is becoming familiar with that as an experience, and to be able to contextualize that in a way that's not reactive, but where you can, as you mentioned in the earlier chat, you can get advantage from that, gain advantage. That is, that's an interesting thing with therapy as well, which is that, I mean, you can take that all the way down to what is sickness. Like if you look at it from a microbiome point of view, sickness is an upgrade, right? It's like okay, that your relationship with life now has to change because situation has changed. Forest has been cut down, or the permafrost has melted, or something, and now there's a new element, and so then a sickness comes up, and what's the modern thinking is that, we have to get rid of the sickness, rather than we have to get through to the end point of upgrading our system, not retarding it so that we are,
even worse.
Because my experience and my methodology is that you come out at the end of a sickness as better and stronger, not back to where you were before you had it.
That's what I've always had that, and I watch that with my children as well. Like when they've gone through very key illnesses, random like 4-day fevers that just floor them, they always come out the end and they've developed in some way, like either they've gone from crawling to walking, or their speech has formed more with more clear elocution after
some concept has kind of
something's obviously landed in the body. I mean, the best one was my eldest when he was less than 1, and it was as clear as, like, it was just such a clear case study. We thought it was whooping cough, but he had croup, really full on croup for a month, and then right at the end, we had a homeopathic doctor working with us who prescribed, I think it was Nux Vomica for him. It was very specific, and the very next day, after this month of croup, the croup had basically cleared, and he just got up, like he'd been crawling around. And that next day we woke up in the morning and he's walking, and it was just it was like, this whole thing happens. He's ill for this month. We administer the homeopathic, we go to sleep, we wake up in the morning, and now he's just moved on. And it was so black and white that it was an amazing experience to watch.
Yes. And that's a really good indicator of the type of medicine that was administered. It was in order to get to the other side of a river crossing. It wasn't to take you back to safety, back to the other side. So it just kind of helped the body not get rid of the illness, but to grow the body.
Yeah. I think we were saying last time we caught up. Personally, I'm not adverse to illness. Like I don't mind it. I find it quite a fun experience.
Yeah. It's quite mind altering, I find.
Yeah. I'm sorry, my telephone is just talking to me. Let me just strangely turn that off. It's been. I think I said something to you. You laughed last time we got up. I said that without those, I'd be even more of a deeply shallow individual. I mean, there's something about fermenting the self under some pressure.
Yeah, I mean, the metaphor of martial arts training is just completely compatible. Like, it's like, yes, you're going to be challenged. You're going to feel inadequate. You're gonna potentially sustain pain. Injury. I was going to say injury, but pain, impact, and that's what learning feels like. So this kind of barometer of comfort, I would say, is such a wrong way to go, and it's that is a cultural epidemic at the moment. Is that having people feel uncomfortable is kind of like this social crime at the moment. And so in that we sort of pandering and fostering to weakness to the point of celebrating weakness.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that can only go well.
Yeah, that's right. And anyway.
Yeah. No, I something that one of my teachers, my Hoshin teacher, Jeff Smith, used to always say was that our job was to find comfortability in uncomfortability. And that was the reason that we were there ultimately. Yeah. So that you could temper the blade. What was it? The other comments? He just had a series of excellent one-liners. Things like, he'd say the most dangerous man is the one with the most lethal sword, well trained in how to use it, but who keeps it sheathed at their side.
Oh,
that like to actually have the potential, like to have the capability of action, but to decide to take part in, say, peaceful times. That's actually power. To be a victim of peaceful times isn't power. That's just you're just a victim of circumstance. Like if you don't have the opportunity the ability to act, and so you have to just almost like the difference between kindness and generosity. If on one hand your kindness and your generosity was out of your own fulfillment, or on the other hand, if your kindness and generosity had a hidden agenda of need, you actually were weak and you needed people to just pity you so that they wouldn't harm you.
Yeah.
And on the outside, they might look similar, but they're vastly different experiences.
It also reminds me of, kind of a real life analogy of that happened was one time I was living in a share house and we had rat problems, and I just didn't want to kill the rats, and so I didn't take action. And then eventually one of the guys did, and he bought rat poison, and one of the rats died in the wall of our bedroom, and I kind of thought, well, I could blame him, or I could blame myself for not using a rat trap earlier. That I might have killed 5 rats, but instead we killed maybe, who knows, 25 rats, because we didn't unsheath the sword early enough. Yeah. So it's very easy to blame the one who unsheaths the sword.
Totally, and yet they're the ones who often are the courageous one. I think of that in terms of like relationships. Like I was just speaking recently to a friend who's going through a big divorce, and chatting to him, he made a good, really wise comment. He said, "Oh, but the relationship had ended long before whatever it was, this final straw that broke the camel's back." He said, but she was just the one who was courageous enough to do something about it. And I was like, wow, that's a beautiful way of saying that, and framing that.
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm enjoying the track that we're laying for this conversation.
Yeah. Well, there was a part just a little way back that I thought it was a good time to bring in that sort of Steiner model of the fourfold being. I think you were what were you talking about? It was something about doing something but not in the right way.
Oh, like having the clarity and the intention lined up with your action.
Yeah, was that in relation to one of your teacher's sayings?
Probably.
What was the first saying? What was the first one?
The first one I would have mentioned was to find how to be comfortable in uncomfortability.
Yes, that was it. Because we've talked previously about how in my work as a therapist I combine acupuncture. So with the backdrop being a lot of Taoism, really, and out of that coming the view of the human body and the cosmology that ties in with that, and then this and so that's a very Eastern model, and then more recently, like bringing in this anthroposophical model, which is, both of them are holistic, and I think for that reason they come at the same thing from a different angle, but they work well, and I find holistic mind's a holistic mind. Like when you look at indigenous wisdom, you might look at the Indians in America or the Australian Aborigines, and you'll kind of see the overlay. So it was just this, when you said that, it just brought to mind, we've talked about how you've got this polarity between the nervous system and the metabolic system.
Right. Yeah. This is good. This is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah. And how they're basically the yin and yang in a way, or a representation of yin and yang in the body from an anthroposophical point of view. But what sparked me to think about that is that this idea of don't try and fix the problem with the thinking that created the problem.
Einstein.
Yeah. And so that this really comes into a useful application when you sort of get this elemental understanding, the four elements of Western, I guess, what would you say, Western cosmology, perhaps? And then overlay that on the different realms of being. So you got the physical being, which is the earth element, and the life body, which is the water element. That's an easy one to remember because the idea of obviously water and life. And then you got the air element, which is more akin with the animal, and that's consciousness. And consciousness is also to do with movement, so air and movement. And then you've got the level of, Steiner calls it ego, but it's not ego with a capital with a little e. It's sort of capital E. And ego just means I am. I think the literal translation is I am.
Latin,
right. So to say I am, I have to be conscious of being conscious. And so that's our pathway to freedom, is when we're not just reacting, right? As an animal.
Would you? So, just like, are you then saying that ego is the fire component of that relationship?
That's right. Yes. Just wrap that up. Yeah.
I'm making my notes in the background. So.
Well, the thing is, so if we leave out for a moment the earth element and the fire element, and we just look at the air and water, basically, you've got the air element, the nerve sense system, and the life body, the water. They're basically at odds, or polar opposites, and because in order to in the same way, in order to get the warmth out of wood, you have to burn it. Consciousness is exactly the same. You have to burn life body.
Yeah.
To get consciousness, and this is why you can't stay awake indefinitely.
Yeah.
Because staying awake is too expensive on life body.
So is that almost like saying, correct me if I've interpreted this wrong, that you could coin consciousness as the yang embodiment of the yin nourishment of water. So like the water body, the life body is the nourishing yin foundation, and then the consciousness is the yang. It's like it's the movement of that nourishment into something, into transformation.
The application of it. Maybe, something like that. Yeah.
And so it has to ultimately collapse at some point back into its nourishment to be reborn.
That's right. It's not self-sustaining. A little in the same way that animals need plants, but plants, well, it's not true, but plants do need animals because there's that whole cycle of oxygen and carbon dioxide. But no, maybe I'll let go of that.
Oh no, I think I know where you're going there. Are you talking about, like, say, the domains? So we've got like the geological domain that gives rise to the biological domain, or the plant domain. Yeah, the plant domain gives rise to the I forget the name, but like the walking conscious animal domain, which gives rise to the information domain. I forget what Buckminster Fuller coined it. Like these domains.
Exactly. So one's dependent on the other.
Yeah. But in like a platform.
That's right. Not equally so in the opposite direction. Yeah.
Yes.
That's thank you for that. That's a good way of putting it. So you've got this. So you see this. I think the reason why this is so valuable to talk about is because you see us as humans struggling to nut out what we're going to do about all these problems that we've created. And it seems the more we think of it, the worse of a job we do. And what I kind of want to bring into the conversation is Einstein's quote, trying to fix it with the same mind that created it, is to say that there is another. All of these states have consciousness, right? Like. We would say in Anthroposophy, you'd say the stone is in a trance state.
Yeah.
And then the plant is in a sleep state. The animal's in a dream state, and the human's awake. So if you want to get down to that level of plant of the sleep, this is the problem. This is the quandary. It's like, okay, I want to heal myself. And it's like, oh, well, you need to go to sleep then.
Yeah. No, but I want to heal my, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But, there is validity in that idea that, no, I want to direct the course of that healing, because I think it's probably for the same reason that I don't want to just kind of get back to normal from this cold. I want to be evolved at the end of it. So it is a good instinct to kind of say, I want to have some sort of conscious participation of it. And the trick is bringing in so if we apply that metabolic nerve sense, yin and yang part, we could say the nerve sense system, the kind of the headquarters of that is in the brain, and the spinal column, and then the HQ of the metabolism obviously would be down in the belly with all the digestive organs. So you've also got that duality, that polarity in the body. And so what you got in between that is the rhythmic system, the lungs and the heart.
Right.
And so if you draw that, you kind of draw a figure 8.
I was just thinking you've got this. Yeah.
Yeah. So you draw the head, and then and then the figure eight where it intersects is the heart, and then it does the bottom of the figure eight down through the metabolism, and that's a useful image, because what mediates between because those two things, the metabolism and the nerve sense system, they're at loggerheads. One is aiming to consume the other, and the other's kind of defenseless until that other one goes to sleep, right? And some people live like that, like they're like, I go to sleep when I fall in a heap,
right?
I make myself drunk enough to fall in a heap,
so like exhaustion. And it's like they're not actually, there's no representative from the metabolic self to say, hey, you don't have to do that. You'd probably go a lot further if you cooperated and didn't take sides, right.
And so it's that rhythmic self, which is the kind of the pulse that's like a little a position that's moving on that figure eight. It's that pulse that would have that move around that course.
And would you then sort of say that pulse, that rhythmic pulse, would be maybe not consciousness, but like intent, or like that would be representation of conscious intention or intent to focus? Because you go.
What I would say is it's that rhythm induces trance. So what you're entering into is a state of consciousness, but it's not a consumptive state of consciousness,
right?
That being awake is, and this is why you can dance for a lot longer than you can carry concrete.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're not, the nerve sense system is all about problems and problem solving. So nothing from that part of the being is out of joy, and nothing of that part of being is out of the spirit of doing something for the thing itself.
Right.
Like what dancing is, right? It's if someone says, "Why are you dancing?" What are you aiming to achieve?
What's
from
the
dancing?
goal? What's the outcome? Yeah.
You'd say, "Oh no, you don't get it. No, it's not like that at all." And if they were really stuck in their nerve sense system, they'd just go, "Well, okay, I'm confused because I can't see what you're trying to achieve through doing that."
Yeah. So like if it doesn't have a goal or an outcome, then it has no valid use or purpose or
exactly. So you see, you would then diagnose, as a practitioner, I would say, oh, okay, you're really stuck in the identification of yourself as the nerve sense system. And as a society, you could generally diagnose us as being that, because it's that thing of going to a forest or something and going, gee, I wonder how much this would be worth if we
see everything for a contrast, because I suppose I'm thinking like you said, problem solving. I'm thinking contrasting. Everything's about from the mental faculty. It's like this or that, up or down. It's forming dualities out of all observations, so that I walk through the doorway, not into the glass.
Exactly, and it's
that kind of thing.
Perfect, and it's really important that we do that. But it's important to know that we're doing it, and that it's not the only way of being, because there's a few distinctions worth pointing out now. One is that the nerve sense system can't be satisfied because it has no mouth, it has no digestive system.
So it can feel desire as such, like a hunger sensation. But it has no direct ability to satisfy itself. Is that because its hunger is burning the fuel of the nourishment of the digestion?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's exactly. So it's like, so I would say a vital life skill in terms of being coming back to this martial arts thing. I think I kind of paraphrased in an earlier conversation that you described martial arts and what you're aiming to bring to your students, and I said, oh, that sounds like you're teaching them how to be effective. Yeah, and the words that you were to gain advantage in any situation, and so, you know, one way to gain advantage in the situation is to know that no matter what, no matter how many cars you get or houses or whatever, or how many races you win or black belt, you know, Dan, fifth Dan,
totally, yeah.
You, the part that was seeking that can't have it. Because it can only see what the next problem is. Yeah. And so the life skill there would be to go, okay, I won't look for that. I won't aim for that to be satisfying. That's just telling me a direction. Yeah. And it'll help me get there. But once I arrive, I have to switch it off and change channels. Right.
In order to internalize the thing that I've achieved into nourishment, for example.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Ready for the next burning.
Yes, because when you digest something, so on the physical level, you digest things in order to break them down to their most fundamental unit that you can then apply as an energy.
Yeah.
So on a metaphysical level, if we say psychological or that sort of thing, or spiritual level, the nourishment is more akin to meaning. Right, but I've jumped a few steps there. I'll just go back a bit. So let's say in our inner landscape, right? Let's just say I've got a choice to make, and it's I'm in a job that I hate, but I need the money.
Right.
Okay. So there's a basic tension there between two.
Yeah, and the but represents the
two directions.
The point of contention. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So part of me wants to leave and have an adventure, and the other part says no. Security's what matters most.
Yeah.
And so let's just say you go with the security and you stay in this job, but you're never satisfied because you're always thinking, oh, gee, you know, what if I followed my passion as a musician or whatever? And then 5 years pass, 10 years pass, 20, 30, and then I end up with a terminal disease.
Yeah.
Right. I've been this
how unexpected.
Yeah, right.
I don't know, I'm only being facetious.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So this struggle's been going on for so long. It's incurred a cost. And so then there you are. You're lying in bed and you don't have the strength now to get up out of bed. And so then you look at these two choices that you had, and in one hand you're holding a fulfilled life that didn't necessarily have the security, or you could say a life of vitality, let's say. And in the other hand you have a handful of cash. And you look at it and or if in order to bring it back to that physical metaphor, in one hand you've got a handful of sand, and in the other you're holding an apple.
Yeah.
You know, and so at that point,
I like that.
Yeah. Well, I would say, yeah, when you're hungry. So life has taken you to a point of digestion where you've taken these things down to their fundamental essence.
Yeah.
So in that sense, life's very effective because it will take you there eventually.
Yeah. I see what you're doing. It's like through a process of dissemination,
digestion.
Like digestion. That's a really good term. I've never considered using it in that way. I might now. What it's really done is stripped back the choices to reveal what you were ultimately choosing between.
Yes.
It's gotten rid of all the noise, and it's just clarified this signal of like what you were deciding between was something that could fulfill you for tomorrow, or something that couldn't fulfill you for tomorrow.
Yeah.
In terms of at the most extreme, at the end point of
Yeah, well, you want to get there in terms of being effective. You want to get there the quickest you can. Because really what you've got is not a choice. You think you've got a choice, but what you've got is sand or food. And if you're hungry, there is no choice.
Yes, I'm with you.
And that's a good thing, because what happens when you reach that in your life, you close the door on that other. It's like me with when I got married, I closed the door on sexual
dating.
relationships with others. And
it's quite relieving.
That's not a hardship for me. That's like thank God.
Yeah, I felt that
now
way
I can
as
get
well.
on with other stuff.
Yeah,
because that takes a lot of energy as well.
Yeah.
And if that's not what your life's about, then the sooner you overcome that, then you've got all this energy to apply to what you're really about. So what happens? So the technique that I use, that I created, I call it the will meditation, and it's basically designed to help you get to that point of digestion, where you're left with not a choice but a place of action. It's like, obviously, once you work out that one is sand and one's an apple, obviously the next action speaks for itself. Like, you're going to eat the apple, and so what people confuse, I think, about the will, or maybe what's fair to say is what the differentiation I'm making between will and willfulness. I would say, like, willfulness is overcoming an obstacle, and it's kind of like, I want it, so no matter what you do, I'm going to climb over you or push you aside or do something to get past you to my goal. So that and that's when people say will, that's sometimes what they mean.
So that's more like drive, isn't it? Like, or not in the natural sense, but like,
drive's a good word. Yeah,
driven doesn't necessarily automatically also include things that are good for you. I mean, you could be driven towards complete self-destruction.
Well, the thing about driven is, if you're driven, there's someone driving you.
Yeah, totally.
And it implies it's not saying I'm driving; it's saying I'm driven. So it's like, my desire is driving me.
Yes.
So that's not a state of freedom. So we say we can do better than that.
And then in terms of like the naming, so I hear what you're saying is that some people could be confused because the names are similar.
Yeah,
talking about the will. And willing, as opposed suggesting some kind of like, I have control over, or my conscious thought can exert direction over.
Yeah,
which is different to maybe could you introduce the will as a metaphorical concept?
Yeah. So just, which maybe just to wrap up that last little segment, it might help illustrate that. So when you've got that moment of going, oh, I'm holding sand in one hand and an apple in the other, when you go to reach for the apple, that there is no resistance. You're not torn anymore, because the resistance was only ever you pulling back in the other direction. Or not you, but the driven part of you, the other desire. That's the other thing about the nerve sense system. These aren't our desires. They're just, we are driven. They are working through us. So that's another reason why it's really good to differentiate that as not being a realm of freedom, because I'm not doing the driving, and that's why it's akin to animals. Animals aren't doing the driving; they're enacting animal instincts, right? So that's not where we're going to find freedom. But when you bring it down to the level of will, and it's not quite freedom either, because we're still only working with the water element and the air element. This is where we need to talk about the fire element. But if we're just talking about will, what you've done is you've removed the obstacles, and so will becomes the most powerful force in the universe because it's unopposed. It's united. If you're just if in a martial arts thing, if you're just 100% like, here's what's going to happen.
You're formidable.
It's going to be hard to beat.
And that's ultimately what people have to work towards, is is how to have such a sense of their own, the place that they can arrive at, that the events just play out in that way.
And they're going to need, they're going to need to be grounded in a sense of righteousness and knowing themselves and all this. So there's not these other little parts that say you're just a greedy bastard who wants.
That's right. Yeah.
That's not really going to work.
You're right. You have to have gathered self in order to have something of substance with which to point in a direction.
Yeah.
It's hard if half of you is lagging off in a different direction.
Exactly.
I was just you just said some great things that brought up a whole list of interesting like, I want to talk about that, I want to go off on that angle, because something like in martial arts, and my background of study is in two main martial arts, in Japanese arts. And so I don't know if I can't possibly say this is how martial arts is. I don't know what it's like in karate or in savate or, etc. But my observation has been that like, I'm trying to distill it into one sentence. Off the back of what you said about having to collapse multiple options into just one option, and that when you do that process, so that if that's the process of digestion, is what you're saying, when you arrive at that one remaining process, there's no one left to convince. Like there isn't a doubt because there's only one. You kind of collapse it into singularity. Yeah. My experience with the Japanese arts has been that is what you're aiming to do intellectually and emotionally. It's like you're collapsing the potential options.
Yeah, yes, and physically as a physical, like that's what Dantian is. It's it is that point of singularity,
I suppose I was just thinking that almost comes as a byproduct of like the physical manifestation comes when you've collapsed the potential of me succeeding, me failing, to just me arriving over there or my movement in this direction. And then it's no longer a question of whether you can or can't, or strength versus weakness. Like it's more just it's very hard to explain. Well, you just know where you're moving towards. Yeah.
Well, when I treat people, we're working simultaneously on the physical balance aspect as well as the psychological.
Right.
Because there really is no separation. You can't be confident and imbalanced at the same time physically.
Yeah.
And the thing about balance is I believe it's often they'll say what's the most important thing that we need, is it food? And you're like, well, how long can I last without food? 40, 50, 60 days, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe water. Oh, well, maybe a week.
Yeah.
It must be breath. Can only last
minutes.
Yeah. Okay, what about balance? How long does it take to fall in front of a bus?
Yeah, you can hold your breath and still fall in front of a bus.
Yeah. You can hold your breath for a minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but hey, it's a split. If you lose your balance for a split second, it can be life and death. Easily, like just I'm not even in an extreme situation, just like walking across the road or through your house, and you black out for a second for some reason and hit the corner of your temple on the desk. So what I'm getting at is that the body is hardwired to not tolerate imbalance, and what I find consistently is when people are holding patterns of dis-ease, it's because they somewhere deep down they had a loss of confidence, and this is kind of what an injury is. You get over an injury quickly if your balance stays intact, but when it was sufficient enough to knock you off, that in itself is not the problem. The problem is that can you auto-correct? It's like the difference between falling down when nobody watches, or falling down when you go to receive your degree certificate in front of an auditorium of thousands of people, right?
Yeah.
You might sustain such an injury to your self-identity that you never go in front of an audience again, right? So that would be a loss of balance. And what happens with the loss of balance? Because the body says, no, I can't tolerate this. This is fundamentally unsafe. I'm gonna kind of like armor over that, and I'm gonna scaffold over it to give me stability. So that's good. It does give me stability, but then I lose access to that. To that faculty. So when you start probing into this with people, you feel the body wants to. There's a dilemma, because it's one part wants to. It feels like something's missing. You know, I used to have an eye. Yeah, that's right. I used to have an eye. I used to have a binocular vision, and now everything seems so two-dimensional.
Yeah.
And so there's a natural.
But I can't go there because it's too painful.
It's too painful, and the thing is, I have to enter into imbalance to go there.
Right. Okay, I'm with you. So it's kind of like there's the decision that has to be made at some point by the consciousness.
And we're back in the dojo now, because we're back in that thing of saying I need to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah. You know, there's an activity that Hoshinden does called the Red Belt Challenge, the 12-week challenge. And it's for new students who've been studying for maybe a year. They can't move on in their belt grades after that point unless they've completed 12 weeks of this list of items of like, well, there'll be no junk food, no refined sugar, and no caffeine, and blah, blah, no chocolate, no movies about any. Basically, you watch mathematics documentaries and you eat carrots, and it's lovely, you know. But you know, one of the great
firewalking, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then you get up to firewalking for the winter. That's for the higher grades. But then, like, one of the total misunderstandings is that anyone cares about the items that are on the list, or that the teacher has any interest. Like, no one actually. Right. And so I find the teenage students, they find this hard to grasp initially, not because they're still growing up in a structure of rules and, you know, yes, this is the authority. It must be healthy for me because these are making these demands. But like when the teacher ends up saying, I couldn't give a damn about whether you drink or smoke or drink coffee every day, or 10 cups of coffee a day, but it's like, can you just not do those things and still function? Are you able to isolate self from? Are you able to gain the emotional states you're interested in without being dependent on those? You know, I can only feel balanced when I've had 6 cups of coffee. It's like put a line through I can only feel balanced and just put a line through that and just say, oh, I can only feel balanced. Next item. You know, I need my chocolate to feel good. You just put a line through that, so that it no longer says that. It just says, I feel good. I can feel good. Yeah, and it's an amazing. But people misunderstand the purpose. They think the intention is to go on some kind of diet for 12 weeks, when really it's just to help everyone have a feeling of what it's like to kind of cook, or also ferment. I think I use like brew in a sense of feeling great desire to take action to solve something, but then just not.
Yeah. I would also bring in the idea of sacrifice there as well. Yeah,
definitely.
Which is a wonderful thing, because to me it means to make sacred. So it's like what in an older culture you would take that chocolate and you would put it on the altar, right? That's for the gods. But the thing is, you're giving that up to attain a higher state. Like the price of that is giving the chocolate away. So that you rise above that level of that chocolate being the thing. I need chocolate in order to whatever.
Yeah, and how ironic that the cost of passing through that threshold is the item that you ultimately don't require anyway. It's like, it's funny, isn't it? It would be like if someone asked, you know, do you want to buy someone's house, and they say yes, but it's going to cost you a couple of leaves over there, and you're like, I don't even want the leaves. Yeah, it's going to cost you a house. It's going to cost you a crappier house to get my awesome house. And if you think about it that way, you're like, oh, well, that's a kind of a no-brainer. Like, why wouldn't I make that?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of easier to. I mean, these you're sacrificing that sort of short-term gain for a longer-term gain, and it's quite a good thing to grapple with early on if you want to get somewhere, isn't it? Because
I think
life's all about offering all those short-term gains, and you can sort of dwell in there, which ends up being its own kind of hell after a while.
Totally. Well, the reason that I went down that path was because you spurred that from when you were saying about how through digestion you take these what look like multiple options, but actually at the end of the day there aren't even options. There's only just one. There's sand or apple. Sand isn't an option at that point of well, no, I want to fulfill my hunger. And so
that's right. Yeah,
no, an option. Well, I was just thinking because in that concept, the 12-week challenge and a few other of these concepts, the idea is like, even around behavior, the idea says people have a strange concept of discipline. What they mean by discipline is or what society means by discipline is to repress desire and to acquiesce through punishment to behavioral changes, as opposed to like, no, just associate and identify with an overarching desire that lays out so clearly the requirements to get there that those are the only options that an individual will take, and then it's not a choice between behaviors. It's like the individual will just behave in the way that they have to achieve the bigger, broader transarching, like transcendental goal.
Yeah. I feel like I want to bring in this the fire element now.
Okay, great.
Because we're talking about this we're talking a lot about desires, and then we've got these overarching desires, and so you someone listening might say, well, isn't that the same as being driven?
Right.
So here's the difference between the air element and the fire element. So remember, the air element was like the nerve sense system.
Yeah.
So that's like I see, I taste, I touch, and that allowed me to move through space and time.
Yeah.
It gives me, thought. A lot of thought is in this thing, and usually the thought is something like, I like that and I don't like that.
Yeah.
I want more of that and I want less of that. And because it's associated with the nerve sense system, the way the nerve sense system works is if, in order for me to hear what you're going to say next, I have to erase or like a windscreen wiper, I have to wipe away the last impression.
I like that. I'm thinking that metaphor.
Yeah, and same with the eyes. If I want to see what you're doing now, I have to erase the last impression that came. So the nerve sense system erases, and so Steiner would say its nature is antipathetic, as opposed to sympathetic. So the metabolic system's sympathetic. It says like, get in my belly, everyone's invited, kind of. Well, taken to its extreme, it would be that.
No. I was now thinking about Fat Bastard from from Austin Powers.
So you got one is sympathetic, one's antipathetic, and then you can test that with the nerve sense system, because if you deprive yourself of sleep for long enough, and so therefore diminish the life force relative to the nerve sense system, you'll get what's called a nervous wreck, and that's someone who can't stand sense stimulus anymore. Right? It's like the noises outside are driving me crazy, and the bright light, I can't do anything. It's hurting my eyes, and so everything starts to hurt. And it's only our metabolic system which says it's all okay, it's fine. It's only because we have that it kind of balances it out, and that we're not just a raw nerve just triggered by everything and reacting to everything, right?
Yeah.
So in its nature, it's all about ending those stimuluses.
Oh, right. Okay. I see where you're going with that.
We think
in terms of as if you were to take that to its nth degree, it wants to finish that, just end the sound, or
well, you think of something like hunger, right?
Oh, right. The whole goal.
Getting this strong kind of sense thing going on, or even pursuing a part, wanting to have sex.
Yeah, like that lust
it's going for the end goal, the resolution.
Yeah.
And even though when you get there, you're kind of like, oh, that was wasn't what I thought, or whatever. It's kind of like
oh, I got my $100 million, but I'm still in the middle. I'm still who I was originally.
Yeah. So then you've got so just to wrap that up, so you can see if you're trying to please something that hates everything, you're in for a frustrating. You're trying to do the impossible. You're trying to lift yourself up by your shoelaces.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So then the level above that, the fire element, above it's not quite the right way to put it, but the I am, its nature is warm curiosity. And its end game, which isn't really an end game, because end games and time in particular only relate to the nerve sense system.
Tracking motion and patterns.
How long till we get there? When is this going to be finished? How long till I get what I want? All this. Whereas the I am, with its warm curiosity, it wants to know, how does this fit in? And so that is a different concept of space and time. It's kind of like, it's like seeing the field. It's like like the nerve sense system is moving through the field to get from A to B, but the I am is the field and just wants to know where things fit in. Or we want to access the mind that already knows, if we put it that way. And when we arrive there, when our whole being arrives there, in relation to a given difficulty, say, like in a treatment scenario, we've got some affliction that we're dealing with. In that moment of saying, oh, I see where this fits, you enter a state of freedom, because you're no longer bound to orient yourself or identify yourself in relation to that thing.
Right. You've now kind of abstracted your realization of how it fits into the whole picture.
Yeah, so if you've got cancer and the cancer's bad, then you're fixed into a dynamic with that. But then when you go, oh, I see where this cancer fits. Oh, I see what it's been saying. You're no longer fighting it, and you don't. There's no fight. The fight's over. You don't have to do anything about it. But the cool thing is, it's the fire element. So the fact that you're now conscious, the whole thing is in this fire of transformation.
Right. Right.
If you warm anything, you change it, right?
Yeah.
That's like you warm bacterial cultures, or you warm butter, or you warm water. It changes state. So the nature of warming stuff is that you change it. So it's not
it introduces motion. Like without it, it's just a photograph of frozenness.
Motion and state of change, right? So you go from ice to liquid to gas, like those. Like it's cool to watch that, but imagine being the water, right? I can fly.
I never thought of that. Cool. I mean, I'm thinking in terms of quality, the water gets to experience what it's like to have structure, and what it's like to be structureless, and then what it's like to be buoyant, and what it's like to air is,
amazing.
It is amazing. And that happens to us.
And then there's fourth phase water, right? Have you heard about that?
Superheated water? Tell me.
No, it's electrically charged water.
Oh, no, I don't know.
Because water can hold a charge, so it can actually, apparently, like in a flowing river, you get all these different columns of water.
Oh, right.
Imagine they're spiraling.
Right, that are separated and dropped from each other.
Yeah, so it's really a bunch of cables all moving down. Yeah. And so apparently trout can pick whichever cable they want, and they can sit in one that doesn't present an obstacle that they have to swim against. They literally they can pick it's like picking a subway and going, oh, okay, I want to head to Thingo, and they, you know what it's like? It's like in Finding Nemo when the turtles,
they get onto the slip stream,
the ocean current there.
You got me thinking. I know we've segued off slightly. I didn't know what you meant until you gave that example. There was a great experiment I saw years ago. It was an artist who would present multiple speakers with and the speakers would be underneath effectively just like a massive, so put like 10 speakers underneath a huge plastic tray with walls, with lips, filled with water, and then different sound frequencies were played to the different speakers, and depending on the interaction between the frequencies of the speakers, the water in a certain area would not mix with the water of the rest of the thing. And you could literally see a puddle of water skin as a completely separate bundle of water in a 1,000-liter tank of the rest of the water. And it was amazing to see how water would not come together unless they were all on the same page, unless they were all vibrating at the same rate. Oh, there's so much in that. I know.
There's theories about how the blood pumps the heart using this fourth phase water principle.
Right.
The idea is that the fourth phase water has a certain charge. It's been a while since I visited this. I think it repels all the positive ions out of the water.
Yeah.
Becomes negatively charged, and then the positive ions that are now in the wall of the artery or the vein are now
like attractive.
Right. No. Sorry. No, that's right. It pushes out. It makes the wall and the blood both positive, say, and so they start repelling each other.
Yes, yeah,
and so that then pumps the blood because
there's a physical change in the
there's this repulsion. Is causing the forward motion, and they say it explains a couple of things. One is that the blood is able to pause in the body, and if it was all happening from this
a central pump,
from this central thing that's pumping from behind, that wouldn't be possible. Anyway.
Oh, you've just thank you. I'm going off on a research path.
Fourth phase water. It's amazing. It's an amazing concept.
I'll look into it.
So we were talking about this fire element, right? And how that's right, and how the different phases of water and what it would be like to be in those different phases.
That's right. Yeah. To be transformed in the process. So I remember something that you said recently when we caught up, which I really, really liked. I think I smiled when you were talking about, say, the fruit on a tree, and you said, the tree grows the fruit through these other qualities, but it's the sun that ripens, like the warmth of the sun is what ripens the fruit.
Yeah.
But bringing this warmth of, say, this consciousness warmth in is what ripens the self, perhaps, or ripens various aspects of the self.
Yeah, and ripening is just a kind of prelude to digestion, right? Because it's all, why do we eat it when it's ripe? Because it's already
it's halfway
on the digestive process. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, there's a Hoshin. Hoshin has a whole bunch of it's called Hoshinden Qigong, like breath work and Qigong practices. And there's one that it teaches called the inner smile, which this reminded me of, which is effectively just sit down and smile at your kidneys. smile at your feet, smile at your guts, smile at your fingers. And it brings with it a few things. Like it automatically kind of associates light. Like it has this, like a spotlight on. And then if you're smiling at, and I find I ask this with my students, even they have similar responses, that no one's thinking of their kidneys in darkness while they're smiling at it. It's like they light up in an imaginary picture of what their kidneys might look like internally with a ray of sunlight focusing down on it. And then that's what spurred me when we were talking the other day to think how interesting. I hadn't considered, because I've been doing that for decades, but I hadn't put the word ripening to that. And I really liked it. I was like, I'm like ripening my kidneys in that process, like ripening my relationship with.
Yeah, well,
in a good sense.
Great. I'm so glad you mentioned that. There's two things I want to talk about there. One is hot and cold,
right?
And then the other one is what you were saying about like ripening the kidneys. In our what makes us unique is not just our personalities or whatever. It's like our blood has our personal signature on it. We talk about our own fingerprint. Like there's no one with the same fingerprint. So that part that makes us not just human, but self or Murray, is this final nuance that is granted by this fire element, the I am. It's what makes it I, not we, right? So when you're smiling on your kidneys, what you're doing is through that warmth you're transferring a clear message of that blueprint, if you like.
That's where you're going with this.
That is the ordering force of you. Because digestion, like here's a cool thing from digestion from an anthroposophical point of view. In order to digest something, nothing of its previous nature can remain.
Wow.
So if it does, that's what's called a food intolerance or a food allergy. What a food allergy means is that your capacity is such that you're unable to take that component down to its fundamental,
right.
And it kind of it's some of it remains. So then, because some of it remains, it's operating on it's running on a different operating system. It's like foreign. I'm a chickpea. This is what I do. And you're like, no, you're part of me now. It's like,
my liver.
No, I'm not. It's like I'm just like a chicken roving around your veggie garden. There's nothing you can do about it.
And is that almost to say that the process of digestion needs to convert everything into self? Like that it's like things can't actually be, I don't know if digested is the right term. They can't be taken on as a building block of self until they have been now identified as self.
Exactly. Right. Because if you could, then there wouldn't be such a thing as an immune system, because what does the immune system do? It differentiates self from other, indigenous from foreign. And if everything we ate was that,
right,
it'd be meaningless, right? So it has to, and until it has that, it can't enter into the bloodstream, would be the idea, right? So that's so the process of digestion is actually a process of ego.
I like that.
Which is
how ironic. But I mean, how ironic given the social convention of ego being an entirely neurological phenomenon,
Isn't it? But when you think about, the saying, you are what you eat, and everyone's like, oh, yes.
Aristotle.
But no, literally, like, that's what I am. I am all the things that I ate or whatever element, water or whatever it was,
or the experiences I consumed.
It all has to become me, and if it's not me, then it's pulling in some other direction. and I'm going to get some disease. So it's it's the I am that keeps. Hey, we're all on the same team here. Come on,
yeah.
Work together.
So can we take that and focus that conversation then to talk about, say in a non-physical concept, a digestion of relationships with others or experiences of like psychological experiences. So I'm imagining that someone comes along and has, so I'm just thinking like an imaginary client of yours. I was going to say customer, and I thought that's a strange way. They are customers. Someone comes along and it becomes obvious that there's been this thing that's come into their reality. Some I don't know. There's some dynamic with their mother or their long lost brother or something.
Well, can I just say that when someone walks in, that their astral walks in. Oh, sorry, I haven't talked about astral. Their nerve sense system walks in.
Right.
That's the one who came with the problem.
Yeah. And the
I'll just say that. So
I like that. We'll bookmark that. Yeah. So I suppose the little theoretical fun that I'm painting is like, I can imagine that this person comes in and there's been some metaphysical experience that they haven't been able to digest. Yeah. And I'm thinking to your chickpea analogy, fighting or being like, no, I'm a chickpea, I'm not Murray. So I'm not going to play ball. Is it that then you've got these concepts of dynamics or say someone's had an experience that they call traumatic? Could that be that they haven't been able to digest the experience to the point of converting that experience into something that they identify with self?
Yeah, exactly. You just said it. That's it.
And that
so basically what the digestion of that looks like is it becomes part of your biography. It becomes who you now are because that happened to you.
Yeah. In the same way that you eat the food, it becomes your eyes, it becomes your fingernails, it becomes your beard. This becomes your character, becomes your personality, becomes your spirit.
Yeah, and there's a few things worth pointing out there. One is if you eat something that disagrees with you, you can vomit it up. But psychologically, once you see something, once you experience something,
right, you can't vomit up
you can't vomit it up. So
is there a similar in the psychological domain, from your experience, is there any similar action like vomiting, but for the psychological domain?
Probably like that amnesia that people get if like you get these people that were like maybe sexually abused or something when they were 4 or something, and there's a whole section of their life they can't remember.
Right.
But it's still not vomiting up because the body has recorded it.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. And so that person will always present with some area of their body that is unconscious and holding that.
Yeah.
No, and I think it's kind of like the thing about life is that we need to kind of get over only the nerve sense system would entertain the idea that you can reverse time. That's what regret is.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And again, it's lifting yourself up by your shoelaces because you can't do it, even though it's a concept that you could do it. That's where the nerve sense system kind of likes to exist in its own realm, because it's like, well, in my realm I can time travel,
and fly.
Yeah, and it's like, no, you can't.
Yeah.
The body will show you that you can't.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's why it's, well, I don't like the body anyway.
That's right.
That's why I'm up in my head all the time. It's continually like
trying to get as far away as possible from the prison of the trappings of the flesh.
But I love how you brought that up. So if we just No,
I'm just fascinated. So I suppose I'm curious to say in that example. So you've said that there isn't this vomiting process that's available to the I'll say metaphysical, just to be like a very broad grouping of experiential, non-tangible experiences. a conversation with someone, an argument, whatever, a dynamic. So what, in that example, if we're talking about the process of digestion, but in a metaphysical sense, what would be your my telephone's so curious.
It's talking to you again.
It is talking to me. It's really weird. It never does that. It's spying on me. I'll probably get ads for digestive
digestive aid,
digestive tablets.
Hey, damn! I'll have to.
You're listening to that, Google? So could you give an example? Like what would you suggest, or what would you do with this person who clearly needed to metaphysically digest this thing? Could you talk to that?
Yeah. So as I said, this is why I kind of bookmarked that little thing of that. It's always the nerve sense system that walks in with the problem. Yeah. Because that's its job. Identify. Without
they walk in, they say, "I'm Susan," and you're like, "Oh, okay, I know who."
Yeah.
Like the identification presents. Yeah.
Yeah. So the person comes in and they say, "I got these headaches, and it's driving me crazy. I want to get rid of it." And I'm like, of course you do. and so from that moment on, my job is to try and convince them that wanting to get rid of it is not helping, and in fact is part of the same thing.
Yeah.
And so we have to start digesting this thing, and the way that we do that is we well, let me just say, so if the nerve sense system is coming with the problem, then we can assume there's a dichotomy, there's a duality of forces pulling in different directions.
Right.
And I mean, what those two things might be, there's infinite variations. one might be I need to have these headaches because they take me out of action, and they force me to rest.
Yep.
And
the
other pull is, well, I can't have these headaches because I've got this assignment to finish, and and
I'm someone who finishes things on time, and I can't be seen. And
right. So they come with that dynamic, and what the nerve sense system would say is, well, can't you eliminate my opponent for me?
Right. And then in theory that gets rid of my problem.
Yeah. But the problem is, like in any warfare, of course, the other side's coming along and saying, well, can you eliminate my thing? And I could say, well, who's paying the most?
That's right. The mercenary, the sides.
But we don't want to do that, because I'd get embroiled in the whole thing, and I'd be a miserable bastard.
But boy, it would be funny.
That's kind of the way, and this is what we do in life, is that this is a war going on between two things, and what tends to happen is at different stages of life, one will get the upper hand, and it'll say, let's say the headache says, "Oh, I've had enough. That's it. I'm quitting uni, and I'm going to go traveling." And the person then has this feeling of liberation. They're like, "Oh, I've dealt with this forever." But all that happened is the one that was trying to study just got tired and depleted.
Yeah.
And the other one got stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
And they went on holidays, and then the other part, while they were on holidays, the other part started to get strengthened. And it was like, it got strengthened by, you're a worthless nobody. Look at you, you're washing dishes and and it's some pub in London, and and we're bound for greatness. You're meant to be a lawyer, and here you are doing this. And then they start to go, yeah, you're right. I really should get back to uni. And so it pulls them there. And then the other part goes, "Oh, I'm so depressed. I thought I'd resolve this." And it just goes round and round.
I like that. So, okay. So we're back to the Yin Yang Theory in terms of how one component can only steal space from the other. There isn't an external source of nourishment. Yeah. So that in order for the headache, I don't know, it's a funny example. In order for the yang to expand, it must have, the yin must have reduced.
Yeah. because
right. And then if it reduces to such an infinitesimal point that it's no longer able to put up a fight, the tension is gone.
Resolved temporarily.
Yeah. And so the symptom of the tension has been alleviated.
Yeah.
But as soon as the yin is renourished and then the war rages again, the symptoms which represent the tension point will become remanifest. Is that am I following that?
Yeah.
That puts a completely different spin. I like that. You can almost put like a warning on every travel brochure on like enjoy 10 days away, and then warning might after a wonderful week away, you'll probably re-engage.
They have flare-ups of symptoms.
Flare-ups of symptoms of whatever your personal dilemma was you were experiencing before you decided to go away.
Yeah. So this person's come in. They've got these headaches, and they'll come up with all these solutions about why it is, and they might even say, "Oh, I just need to quit my job," and so at this point you're just kind of like hearing all this, neither agreeing nor disagreeing, and but getting interested. So I've got to be that warming part, right?
So curious.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Genuinely, right?
Yeah.
And this is this. I want to bring in hot and cold now, because if you want to maintain something, you cool it, right? If you've got meat in the freezer, you're doing that because that coldness is limiting that biological breakdown to as close to nothing as possible.
Yeah. You're talking like stop time on an inevitable process almost.
Yeah. And so then if you wanted to speed up the biological decomposition process, you would heat it.
Yeah.
And that's, you're starting to digest it then, or something's going to digest it. Whether it's you or bacteria or whatever.
So you could just say digestion as a universal process, like the process of digestion.
Yeah. So when so this is why I like this languaging of digestion as a principle that moves towards a kind of a healing resolution, because it's I'll just go on with, I've kind of lost that track just a little bit. So with the cooling something, so when you're cold to something, you're going to preserve it.
Oh, like an argument or a
yeah. Like I'm not talking to my ex-wife anymore.
Right. Right. I want to pause in time the dynamic there.
Yeah. And basically all you're doing, like you're pausing it, you're putting it in deep freeze for another day.
You really should write a book and title it like, Dear Western Society, unfortunately everything you have been doing is flawed. Memoir from Murray Goodchild. So cool and cold.
You see it with next door neighbors, and they cut the tree that used to hang over, and now I don't talk to them, and this can go on for 20 years, and you live with that cold of you almost don't even cast your eyes over in that direction. So
is that because in order to do so would perhaps slightly warm up, or would slightly focus warmth onto that and spur the inevitable process we're trying to avoid?
No, it's more like it's just going to make you cold to think about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. And it's like, so everyone knows the expressions that they gave me the cold shoulder. They were cold-hearted. They were totally cold to me. Oh, they're cold-hearted. Yeah. Or they were so warm to me. They're so warm-hearted. It's such a warm smile. So we know at that level of language, which often speaks about our intuitive knowing, we know what that means.
Yeah.
And it's that thing of where you're sitting at the bus stop and someone else is sitting there, and you're kind of pretending that both of you are pretending that you're not there, that the other person doesn't exist. And then you do that for a while and go, oh God, this is a bit uncomfortable, look at your watch, see if the bus is coming yet, and then you kind of go, oh well, maybe I'll try saying hello, and you say, oh hi, how you going anyway? Bus is taking a while, isn't it? And they say, yeah. Oh well, at least the sun's shining, and you say, yeah, that's right. I mean, the weather's been lousy lately, but geez, I'm really grateful for it today. And they say, oh yeah, particularly since I got to finally plant my pumpkin seeds.
Right.
And you're like, oh, you grow pumpkins.
Oh, yeah.
So that's like trying to start a fire. You
I like that. Yeah.
And
right.
then,
so it's like kindling.
And then all of a sudden it catches fire, and you're talking about these pumpkins. You both love gardening.
Wow.
And then it goes into a wildfire where you realize, my nephew lives with me. Like, what are the chances?
Yeah. So we should all move in together. Yeah, right.
All of a sudden, on multiple fronts, you've got this fire, and that's the way fire works, right? You see a little bit catch here, and then all of a sudden, that little bit of newspaper's caught over here, and
I really like that. I like how that makes small talk. It retitles it kindling.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no such thing as small talk. It's it's kindling. It's foreplay.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Right. So you're basically applying that same thing in this scenario of the therapy.
Yeah.
The therapeutic scenario, except you're the surrogate person, because really the ones you want to get talking are the two,
right.
or that person and that person's circumstances. And their I am. Yeah. They need to bring their I am to their circumstances and warm those circumstances through getting interested.
Yeah.
And so I surrogate that. I start saying, all right, so you've got this headache and it sucks, and I hear that, and I hear that it like it's impacting your work. That must be actually quite scary to think that maybe your headaches will stop you achieving your dreams. And they'll be like, yeah, I mean, I'm at my wit's end, and it's like, wow, so this is really significant. When did this start? And you're like, oh well,
about 45 years ago.
Yeah, when I first started doing exams in grade 12, and I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. Oh, so you put a lot of pressure on yourself? Oh, what's that from? Oh, I had to live up to my expectations of my dad. Yeah. And oh wow, interesting. Okay, so did you? So you were getting expectations from your dad, and then so you overcame your headaches and you did well in school, and then you went to law school, and now you're getting headaches at law. Do you like doing law? Oh no, I hate it. Ah, right. Wow. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So let me just feed that back to you.
Yeah.
Da 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 da.
Yeah.
And now you're getting, and they're like, huh. I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
and then you see, and then we go anyway. So hop up on the table.
Yeah.
Okay. So and then I'll bring up some of these as I'm talking. I'm tuning into my own body and my own reaction, because we are kind of like
barometer of.
We're like you know the way the sitar works. It's an Indian.
Yeah, the sympathetic resonance.
Has a sympathetic set of strings, right? And so you play one set of strings and the other resonates with it. So I regard myself as like a sitar that when they start talking about their discord, the feeling of that resonates in me.
Rings inside you.
Yeah. So as I'm listening, I'm listening to my body at the same time, looking for this discord. And then I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember when they talked about doing exams in grade 12. That there was a lot of discord there. So they're on the table now, and I'll say, so your headache started coming when you were in grade 12. Tell me about that. And so they'll talk about that, and then their body will just start offering up all these points of discord, which are any sensation is the interface between two different processes.
Yeah.
Or no, not two different processes, between two different qualities.
I get that.
Yeah.
This is like how the eye, if the eye is well, it shouldn't be able to see. You shouldn't be able to see your eye. You shouldn't be able to hear your ear unless you have some kind of butting quality problem with the ear faculty. Right.
So So the way I present that is I ironically, I usually have cold hands. So so I might put my hand on their arm and I'll say, so your arm feels warm to me. Does my hand feel cold to you? And they'll go, yep. I'll go, okay, well, that's so you can feel that. And what that means is that that's a process. What do I mean by that? Well, because my hand's colder than yours, my hand is warming up. And your arm is cooling down. So there's a process going on. And the way that we know that is because we can feel it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, okay, anything that you're feeling right now, I want you to get to kind of entertain the idea that it's all processes. And now I also want you to entertain the idea that your body knows what it's doing.
Wow.
You may not like, just the same way we were talking about in the dojo learning, you may not like how it feels like to get thrown because someone just did a move on you that you didn't know.
Yeah.
You may not like how it feels, but it initiated a process where you started to go, hang on, what happened there?
Yeah, that is the learning.
Yeah. Oh, I got drawn in. That's when it happened.
Yeah.
You know, and so we may not like how it feels, but that's irrelevant to the goodness of the process.
Yeah.
So and this is coming back to this nerve sense system. We have to deauthorize. We have to de-license the nerve sense system from saying whether something's has value or not.
Right, because it's only going to apply value to things that it associates with comfortable in the short term, satisfying in the immediacy.
Exactly. So we sort of start to challenge that idea, and we say, okay, let's just say that whatever you can feel, whether it's a good feeling or not, let's just say it's a process. And now here's a leap of faith. Let's just say that because it is a process and because your body knows what it's doing, and you don't know how to pump your heart. Only your heart knows.
Yes.
And you don't know how to filter the blood and extract urine. Only your kidney knows how to do that. So let's stop pretending that we know. And let's just say that the body's good at that.
Yeah, right? That's its job.
And the only thing you know about it is that you can feel certain things going on.
So you're conscious of a process in motion.
Yeah.
And that's about as far as your understanding. No, your direct skill in the area is gonna.
Yeah, and that's your understanding is going to be based completely on how you've judged it. Because the thing you hate, you're most likely to know very little about.
Yeah.
You only know that you hate it and it does that annoying thing, right?
Yeah.
And the rest is just projections.
Because you've never investigated it.
They just do that to annoy me, you know. That's just like a projection.
Yeah.
So we don't know anything about that which we hate, and then we build coldness towards it. So what I'm doing when I get this person to talk about their stress in their grade 12 exams, and I'm listening to my body, and I'll go, I kind of let them in on a secret. It's like I can kind of feel what's happening. Let's see if that's true. And I'll go, does it hurt? Does it hurt there? You know, ow! And so I'll just find all these points on their body. And that's when it starts getting really interesting, because they're like, first of all, they're like, how do you know how to do that? And I'm like, well, it's about listening to your body, and it's about trusting that what your body can tell you is good. Your body is the Garden of Eden. It is not working against you. It is, you know what I mean? There's this thing that the body is this scary thing that's going to kill you in the end.
The mortal coil.
Yeah. Or even overcome the weakness of the flesh.
That's right. If you could only, then you could be immortal. It's that old, old illusion.
It's like, come on. We are blessed with this divine intelligence which we know nothing about. we did nothing to create it, right?
Yeah.
So it's a gift.
Yeah.
And so So I'm starting to make these associations with their mental process and their body. So I'm starting to create this link, and at this point they're starting to go, hang on, like, you mean like what I'm thinking and is affecting my little toe? And
yeah.
And then how is this possible? And you just keep going, and you're like, oh yeah, and that shoulder there, that links with your arm, and then down here, does that hurt? Ow! And they're like, oh, that's weird. I've had problems with that leg ever since I was
12 in year 12.
In year 12. and now they're
and my father had problems with that.
Yeah. And now they're like, oh, this is amazing. Something's happening, right? They've gone from, I want to get rid of this, to kind of going, this is a process that is so fascinating, but the real crux of it is this process is the gateway to my evolution. This headache is not something to amputate. It is the thing into which I need to go into, because the rest of my life is beyond that.
Wow. Well said.
The rest of my potential.
Yeah. And
it's this thing in shamanism where you wrestle with the adversary, and or it's a Bible story where this I don't know if it was Abraham or something, wrestles with an angel and says, "Bless me,"
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like this thing where
give me grace kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's this thing where you turn this thing into an ally.
Yeah.
Or you overcome the dragon and you get the treasure. It's like it's in all of the mythologies.
That's funny, because I mean we're right back to where we started some of this conversation with talking about the Sun Tzu and the war strategies. One of the key war strategies and it's basically listed as like the highest, I don't know what the word is, not like point, but you know what I mean? Like it's the most sought after process to win the war is to convert the enemy into a friend. It is it's like stated as that is the number one cleanest, most beneficial way of winning the war. And then it comes down with a list of like, but if you can't do that, then kill them. If you can't do that, do this. But it's like the rest of them are just they're not as good. They're secondary. And if you can achieve this, if you can convert enemies into allies, you have like you've won the game. Like you've
that's right, because any of the other options are the continuation of war.
Yeah, they're just
because in a war, the thing that you're suppressing,
I suppose they're battles
will always on a different day
play out again
in strength, or it'll always come back and bite you on the bum. But that thing of actually making it your ally.
So are we back to digestion again there? So thinking that, like, in my mind, what is an ally? It's someone who I find sameness and similarity on some point. So it's like,
and that you commonly work. I'd say you have a common objective, maybe.
Well, I was just thinking in terms of what we were talking about before about the digestive process, or how something has to be, in order for it to be taken on, it has to be converted into or same as. Maybe I convert these enemies into metaphysical pieces of myself, and then I can eat them. Then I can consume the idea of them, or I can consume the qualities of them.
All right, here's the catch.
Yep.
So you got to be careful. See, it's interesting. The art of war, it could have been called any number of things, right?
Yeah.
But it was probably appealing to people's nerve sense astral system of, I want to win a war. Let me read this book, right? But it could have been called the art of co-creation.
Well, I mean, I that's the English translation. I actually don't know. I don't know if through mistranslation, I don't know the original term.
Yeah, what I'm getting at is kind of like the doorway through which you enter into things. Often, it's very hard to to get any other outcome than
the quality
that the door determines.
Yes,
you know?
yes, yeah.
So yeah.
Phrasing it
as
war strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, because that now coming back to the nerve sense system and metabolic system, we can say the nerve sense system is cold, and the metabolic system's warm.
Right.
So the nerve sense system, because it crystallizes things, that's in effect, it freezes things. So and it does that. Like that's a chair.
Right. And now that's it forever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And they're a bastard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So and that's just who they are from now on.
Yeah.
Right. Now when the nerve sense system comes and says, I want to win this fight, what its idea is, I'm gonna affect this thing and make it the way I want it.
Mm.
But the difference is when you come at it from the fire element, the ego, what you have to be prepared in order to reach that state where you become an ally. In other words, you become them, they become you.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like that, you both have to have gone through a transformation. It's not
exactly.
It's not just
you don't get to stay the way you were.
Yes, yeah. Otherwise, it would be impossible.
That's right, and it's the same with that healing journey. I don't tell him this at the start, but where it kind of ends up going is you don't get to be the same person walking out of here as you were when you came in, because
that's the cost.
That's the deal. You need to let this process digest you, or at least the idea of who you thought you were, which is digesting the astral, or the nerve sense system.
Yeah,
and such that you need to dissolve those concepts and come up with better ones.
Brilliant.
That are more.
So then, like, ultimately, we're all in the process of being digested in this concept. And then, if we go back to what you said earlier about like ultimately the process of digestion revealing that there was only ever one real substantial point of singularity. That the sand and the apple weren't actually choices around what to eat for lunch.
Yeah.
Is it that then through that whole process, it's like I as a whole individual am being consumed and digested towards the fundamental of whatever it is that makes up that which I call this, or I, like
the only the I am can withstand the digestive process.
Yeah, I like that.
Right, because it's sort of like the astral kind of gets dissolved.
Yeah.
The metabolic never had an identity because it's just oneness.
It's just process. Yep.
It's just process. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's the I am gets and because the I am doesn't have a preference, it's untouchable.
Oh, right. Of course. Right. Because it's willing to identify at any point.
It's just watching the show,
Yeah.
and being fascinated, like, wow,
Yeah.
So that's cool, and it's kind of that thing of it's sort of that thing of that's the alchemical gold. Gold is kind of done with its process. It's not of interest. It's at the end of its evolution. So so it's like the gold part of ourself is just waiting for everything else to catch up.
Yeah. Totally.
Or actually shining the light of warm curiosity in order to facilitate that.
Yeah. Which it does as a nature of its being rather than any doing, I imagine.
That's right.
It just is.
Yeah.
And then in the presence of that, it encourages isness in others or I really like that. I really because as we talk, I'm just like it's the second time I've heard you talk about this, and so I'm just pulling pieces in my head to form a concept that I'm building out of what you speak, and pulling experiences of mine from the past as the examples. I really like this.
It's very usable. And have you listened to episode 1 of the podcast of the workshop?
No. I decided for whatever reason that I'm working through the rest of your podcast first before I go back. Right. I don't know why, but I immediately started on the second one. and then I moved up and I enjoyed betrayal and sickness and disease, and then I'm working my way up. And my plan was to then go back for some reason.
Well, the episode 1 kind of gives you it's kind of the workshop of the mechanics of the will meditation.
So maybe for listeners at home, do you want to just give a quick expose of that and where they can find your podcasts?
Yeah, sure. So I have a podcast called the Bardic Body Podcast. Bardic as in the musical bard. So the Bardic Body Podcast, you can find that on Spotify. I think it might be on Apple iTunes as well, and some others. What else?
Well, I just thought you'd give a good plug because I mean, maybe what I can do is I can
probably I'm a shit salesman.
Terrible salesman. To buy this thing? Oh, I don't know. Maybe not. Don't buy my products. No, I just thought maybe listeners would be like, oh, I want to hear Murray speak more. Where could I go to find that?
Yeah.
I could put the
Bardic
link.
Body Podcast. There you go.
Bardic Body Podcast. I could put maybe the Anchor FM link.
Yeah.
Would that work? I can put that in this in the post with this video.
Yeah, or even if you've got Spotify, just plug it into the search, and it comes up there.
Yeah, awesome.
Check it out. And I don't know. I'd like to be hearing more from people. I haven't. I maybe need to find the little switch that kind of allows people to comment or something. So I haven't kind of gotten into the interaction of it yet. But I'd really love to hear people's responses, because then I could kind of be more like a conversation then. What drives it at the moment is when I'll I'll do a treatment, for example, and a certain issue comes up, and I'll be like, oh, I think that'd be a really good subject, and it's sort of the conversation kind of happens through that as a little engine.
Yeah.
Or it's conversations like this as well, just like little parts that I want to elaborate on more.
Yeah. I'm sure that we should have more of these.
That'd be great.
It's really great having you on the show, Murray. I really appreciate it. And just your like decades worth of on boots on the ground in the field, you know, like what you said, curious exploration and knowledge building, where you've developed some of these ideas as your own concepts, yes, out of a framework of your study, but then you've applied them in your real experience, and that feedback has refined them or fleshed them out into a unique, you know, shard. And that's what I'm really interested in, because you have very I think very, very useful analogies and very, very wise insights into the nature of being in these processes.
Thank you. I think also that intersection of Chinese medicine and anthroposophy is I'm grateful for having the background in both, and I guess I'm kind of one of the nodal points where they cross over. So I get to draw from both of them. And but what I really like about anthroposophy is because it's you know, Steiner was talking about this time.
Yeah.
And so it really speaks to the processes that we're going through now, and through my own you know, digestive process and synthesis of those ideas, I really feel like it gives me orientation as to where we are at the moment, and that's so lacking, because there's not a lot else that kind of that speaks to that need for us to find meaning, and it's not just in the sense of it being a comforting thing, like the way, you know, some people might reach for something, but it actually makes sense, and it actually has agency. Like I actually feel the principles kind of work through me and create a resonance, you know, that sort of thing where you the proof is in the pudding. You kind of get more energy, or you get more clarity, or more calmness, or something. That's my experience with it, and a lot of that comes out of his. He places us at this point in our human history within a larger narrative. Both past and into the future. And the biggest thing we're dealing with as a culture is just meaninglessness, and despair and all these sorts of things. So so I really encourage anyone. Epidemic of meaninglessness. And it's really not. We're not designed to operate well inside of meaninglessness, which tells me something about the nature of faith and God, actually, because if we operate well within faith, then that tells me that there's a reason to have faith.
And if societies crumble in the absence of meaning, then it suggests that the human isn't developed to function in that kind of society.
And when you look at it like that, that's a scientific rationale. There's nothing airy-fairy about that. In fact, it would take a hell of explaining it away. I mean, a lot to explain it away.
I think like through my observation, my experience, I've been looking at a similar question for the last 10 years, but maybe from a very different lens. This idea that, like, actually, I'm suspicious that modern human culture hasn't dispensed with faith. It's just applying its faith in a way that's unreachable from the individual's perspective. So it's like, I think of like the Judeo-Christian social concept. It gives a permission's not quite the right word, but it gives a tool that functions to provide the individual with a direct sense of relationship, where like faith becomes a personal relationship where an individual can attend or can see themselves reflected in, or can observe over time a conversation or a change in the relationship, between the center of themselves and that which they call God or whatnot. And then modern society's shifted it. I mean, I look at people and they act like fanatics, completely obsessed with faith, but the faith is applied to massive overarching institutions that say to the individuals, you personally can't have a relationship with science. You must have a relationship through me, the priest of science. I mean, it effectively...
So familiar, isn't it? Like that,
isn't it?
That whole
I mean, isn't it just Catholicism 2.0? I mean, because I enjoy copying the flack. I mean, I consider myself a scientist in my endeavors. I mean, less so. I was going to say, even as specifically as down to electrochemistry, like it's a science. But the distinction between the qualities of the religion of scientific endeavor and the actual application of the method of science, like those are two completely different things, and it does remind me of the great stories, of 2000 years ago, where the individual is denied its relationship with divinity, and it's told, you're too small, you don't read and write, you can't possibly understand the language of the divine, so through me you have to, I'll be your conduit to this relationship. And then that kind of disintegrated into a mass education of the individual, and what I saw through history as like an elevation of the individual. Get rid of that middleman. The individual can have their relationship with the divine. And now our society's kind of swung back in that strange direction, where you've got these priests of relationship,
Yeah, and usually it's through selling a lie, like that we want to believe. Like that life is safe, for example.
Yeah, totally.
You know, isn't that what this whole thing's about? It's like, oh, who's going to make us safe? And it's like, well, you never were. You never were, but now you're just confronted with that, and you're having a
well said.
You're having a dilemma with that because you're giving credence to the part that's having a tantrum and saying it should be safe.
Yeah, when in reality, like you said, actually, it's never been that way.
No, you just didn't know that.
And now it's suddenly in a way where you can't just dismiss or rationalize away so easily.
And this is where it doesn't work to celebrate people's woundedness and their weakness, because that's not going to help anyone overcome that. And reality doesn't give a shit whether you
that's right
accept it or not. That's it's called reality. It just happens. So it's up to us to kind of to do that, and that's what culture's meant to do. But it's you know, it's kind of looks like to me it's been hijacked, or and we can't put the blame out there either. It's because
no, we've all
we're sort of letting we're letting those stories that are kind of a bit more soothing or appeal to our childish self, really. Like you know, I want the world to be safe, and it should be safe, and it's not fair that it's like that. So kind of, and you know, and that comes out of the worship of the adolescent or the you know, it's like we stopped honoring elders a long time ago, and we started worshipping
children.
Immaturity, immaturity, and with that goes the whole gamut of immature ideas.
Yeah, totally.
And the unwillingness to face up to the truth of life.
But I like if I look at my observation of I suppose I originally would have said Western culture, but I think it's bled into the majority of modern human culture now with globalization. The entire of the humans, this modern era of humans, the last 10 to 14,000 years, it seems like it's like a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old, you know, and that I don't know. I'm granted. I take solace and enjoyment in the idea that I remember as a micro version of that, what my experience was like, you know, and is like, and as a teenager, and what that process was like into adulthood, and then all the various stages of epic maturation. And then I look at human society, and I'm comforted by thinking like, in 400 years from now, the entire society will have aged into, you know, a young parent whose values are completely different, or, you know, and that then obviously all the society will slowly mature.
Here's an idea that's something to chew on. You know how you can watch a child and their physiological development correlates with their intellectual development.
Yep.
You know, they start speaking and you know, that it's kind of obvious. At a certain point, that doesn't happen anymore in our lives. Like the older we get, we don't necessarily get wiser. It's kind of like you kind of see two different streams. You see one person who just kind of got wiser and wiser, and then another person who kind of at some point that stopped happening. You know, and maybe they just, I don't know, got into drinking or whatever, and they just at age 30 and they haven't moved since. Steiner kind of has a explanation for that. He says that in ancient times that physiological process evolved and matured the human character up until later years, like 60 or whatever, 70. And over time, just through the law of the universe, or for the good in some sense. But that age has been moving backwards.
Right.
And now the age at which our physiological development and our psychological
diverge.
Logical development, diverge, is around about the age of 28.
Yeah, right.
And so what it means is that if there's no effort on the part of the individual, that's where you'll stay. And that's kind of, and if you entertain that idea for long enough and you look around and you look at people who just kind of, you'll kind of see this particular age where they always hark back to, you know, the glory days.
Yeah.
Because that's when, you know, things are great when you're evolving, you know, and things are alive and things are changing. And then when you stop developing, things stop being new anymore. So of course you're going to look back and you're going to say, gee, they were great times. And you'll listen to the same music you listen to then and this sort of thing. And then you'll see the same, and, you know, you'll see in politicians, they might be 70 years old, but they're still acting out 28-year-olds' values. Yeah. And trying to be like, you know, hair transplant or trying to be that. Yeah. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I think what I gleaned from that is like, I better take it upon myself to develop myself through meditation and you know, mindfulness practices, whatever develops me spiritually, because it's not a given.
I think it would like it automatically suggests that the individuals who make that choice reap directly the rewards and the benefits of that. You know, like the riches are right there in the process. You don't need much convincing. You know, and it's not like oh, you plant those seeds and then 400 years later the corn grows. It's quite obvious. Yeah. Quite immediate. Because you've got such a clear contrast of a society around you who are walking around in nappies. Yeah. You know, having temper tantrums.
That's harsh.
I mean, I'm going to be quite harsh. I didn't say any individual people, just the society in general, you know, like, yeah, I mean, definitely the society that I live in. Yeah, it's obvious that it's just just a teenager exploring concepts, putting on masks, trying on different things, seeing if this feels like an identification or if that feels like, you know, maybe, you know, I'm a punk now. No, I'm a Sex Pistols listener. Oh, actually now I'm a ballerina. It's like, it's all just, it just reflects the process that I certainly observed teenagehood was about. Maybe not to that extreme, you know, but I have general uplifting excitement about the human race and the future.
Yeah, and what you said about that self-evident thing, it's like you know, like some people, you know, like let's just say, for example, someone gets hit by a car and people go, oh, you know, they did yoga and blah, blah, blah. And what good did it do? Yeah. And it's like, well, no, that's not the point. It's like the quality of life. Yes. Quality of life. Yeah. Is what you kind of know when you're doing this stuff. It's not the outward signposts of you know, maybe I can make more money and blah 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 if I'm drinking, smoking, exploiting, whatever. But it's a lousy quality of life. If I was to make that choice, you know,
I just think that and it's part of my it's something that I think is just that I don't think there's anywhere in the universe that I can get away from myself, and that ultimately although it's a strange concept, am the one who has to live in my own company. And then I think, wow, that's a you know, if I take that infinitely, if I think, okay, well. Even from a fundamental physics perspective, we know that there's only the constantly interchanging relationship of matter. You know, there isn't new matter. And we take that assumption, I think, well, what if there was a thread of consciousness that associates through that matter and it's infinite, changing from a chair to a tree to a ball to some gas, whatever. And I think I better take action in paths in the direction now that lead towards, like, how I want to feel long term has to be how I want to feel now. There can't be a discrepancy between, well, I'll feel bad for the next 10 years and then I'll magically feel better. Or I'm going to be really stressed for the next 50 years. Then I'm going to retire into infinite relaxation. Like, I know, like what you said before, that the qualities of the doorway, the qualities of the threshold that you pass through, they are the qualities of the path, and they're the qualities of the outcome that you're going to experience. And so what we were talking earlier, I can't remember exactly the context.
Well, remember when we were talking about like the idea of retiring, do a particular job where someone's telling you what to do for 40 years, and then at the end of it, you'll know what to do.
Yeah, practice being told what to do for 40 years. Yeah,
and then you're meant to, at the end of that, know what you think you should do.
Yeah, as if you're going to have the skills.
Yeah, where you just, it doesn't work like that, does it?
No. And I think the same thing, like, you can't practice, miserableness and then be have any skill at experiencing happiness, it just doesn't work that way, I don't believe. And then, but I take that, like, if you extrapolate that out infinitely, so say the infinite universe, I think, well, it's kind of the same thing long term. like if what I enjoy is when the feeling in the center of myself, my actions, my words, my deeds, my processes line up with the vibration of the center of myself, that's what I call fun, enjoyment, love, contentment, happiness. I don't know, all those keywords. It's just when the different aspects of me are kind of vibrating together in the same homogeneous place.
Yeah.
And I think, I'd like that. If I had to pick something, that's what I'd pick. That'd be the goal of always returning to that, was what I would pick for eternity.
It's a really good practice, I think, that idea of when you're sitting with something and how it feels, I don't know, like let's just say your job.
Some decision you have to make.
It's easy to be in a job and go, well, it's only for another few years.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you're practicing whatever you're practicing, practicing hating a job. But a really good practice is like, how would I be if this was forever? And what I find is, where it takes me is, I have to find the balance point of, like, like when you're carrying a bucket and you're like, if you've got to carry it 100 meters, you'll carry it a certain way, and then if you have to carry it for 10 kilometers, you carry it a different way.
You'll fix it.
And so that feeling of, like, what if this was forever? How would I be with it? You have to find the place of least effort, and not even hold the thought of, when am I going to get there? Because that just brings in the suffering. It's like you have to be in this this practicing of how I balance skillfully this situation, the dynamics, all of the counterparts. I'm looking for a word I can't find.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, I'm thinking now straight back to what we said a bit earlier about faith. Maybe the displacement of faith. I think maybe what's come with that in society is also a displacement of long-term thinking, or a displacement of long-term investment. That there's a great quote I like. I can't remember who. It's one of those quotes that's floated through. I have no idea who originally said it. It says, the society that's working well is the society where the old men plant trees whose shade they will never sit under.
Oh, beautiful.
And I like it. Just speaks to that concept that there is a sense of more than now, of, like, beyond immediacy.
Yeah.
And I think one of the difficult concepts of like extreme mechanistic view, where it's like there's now and then there's nothing, I die, it's all over, is that you would then have to have your own altruistic desire in order to plant seeds. Like if you're going to contribute positively to society, it's going to be entirely out of your own sense of altruism, not just generally out of a sense that maybe, like what I said before, if I kind of feel like, well, why shouldn't I cheat and lie and just prostitute? It's like, it's because it's because there's a feeling in me that I wouldn't want that feeling long term, and I tell myself a narrative that feeling is just going to constitute a certain taste that I'm going to have to enjoy for the rest of eternity. And I don't even mean in like in a Catholic or a Christian sense. I just mean the unending universe. There isn't a time point on that. And that really that comes in and alters my behavior. It alters the actions that I take. But I can imagine that if I really had convinced myself that, like, there's no point, the world will shake us all off, humanity will end in the end, we'll all die in a ball of flames, what's the point? That kind of nihilism.
Yeah.
It makes sense why people would just be like, I'll cheat and lie, whatever. I mean, if everything's going to end anyway, why? It's that weird concept that says if I'm just going to die anyway, why bother eating?
Well, notice how there's the desire to end. So what do you reckon? Who's speaking?
Right.
There?
Yeah. Okay. What a good segue.
Yeah. So and that's because if you want to sell something to someone, you sell it to their discontent. So and because media is kind of the driver of culture at the moment, it's like it's speaking and amplifying that discontent. So it's targeting the part of us that's never going to be satisfied, because that's where the profit is.
Yeah.
So we need to know that, and need to know that any action that's going to try and satiate that is never going to work.
Yeah.
And then I think I kind of need to go soon.
Yep. We can
I just would like, before we finish, I would just like to say that but if we speak to each other, knowing that there is this other tier, which is that warmth element, that if I'm warm to you and I bring that out in you, and then you warm me back, we're exiting out of that old paradigm, and we can help each other with that. But we have to know that your nature is not when I say you, I mean the other. The other. You have to know that the other person's nature is not intrinsically or factually cold.
Yes.
That there is actually something else. If that's all I'm seeing, then I'm not seeing everything.
Yeah.
And I can kind of be playfully curious to see if I can find glimpses of that other thing, and then speak to that.
Yeah,
I think we can help each other. Yeah,
right. Offer a relationship to that, not to the cold.
Exactly. There was some sort of definition of it was something to do with a teacher or some role that aims to elevate someone. It was saying something like the best part of me speaking to the best part of you, or something. You heard of that one?
Yeah,
I can't remember. It was
like
quite eloquent, but
like the Namaste translation. Yeah, like the divinity that is me recognizes the divinity that is you, and speaks to that level. I think perhaps the practice is lost in the use of the word, but yeah,
at least it's a remnant reminder in the language.
That's true. Well, look, I reckon we wrap it up there. That's been great, Murray. Thank you so much for joining me for a chunky 2 and a bit hour recording.
Yeah.
I love it. Would you be up for, we could do another one of these at some point in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that.
Pick a different topic, go off down the path of that.
That'd be great.
Fantastic.
That'd be great.
Well, like we might hang around and just have a chat afterwards, finish recording, just to wrap up and say thanks. But to everyone listening at home, I hope that you really enjoyed that. That was awesome. And I will remember you can look up Murray's podcast at the Bardic Body. You can look up on Spotify and possibly Apple iTunes. Otherwise, I will, if you listen to this on the private student chat page for Hoshinden, there will be a link to Murray's anchor.fm podcast page, and you can check it out there. Everyone at home, I hope you have a good week. Thank you. Thanks, Murray.
Thanks, Sil.
Bye.
Bye-bye.